Hello, you're very welcome to the NFL show here on the Under Center podcast. Dara here with you, as always, joined this evening by Reen and Al. Lads, first of all, how are you two doing?
Yeah,
Marvelous
good.
as usual.
Excellent. Reen, unless you aren't a member of the Rhinos, you probably will not know. Reen got himself a little bit of a boo-boo this last weekend,
I
which,
did.
you know,
Yeah.
at least you did it in a commendable action in terms of going for a pass. But
Yep, made the catch.
Yeah, you made the catch. I do remember actually now that you rejigged my memory on that specific play that you actually kind of made the catch. You were on the ground and you made sure you held the ball above your body to say like, I have it here.
I heard some people in the background saying, "Did he make that catch?" So I was like, "Yes, I fucking did." I put it up in the sky.
But it didn't come without consequences. A little bit of a boo-boo. You're going to be sort of sideline watching now for the next few weeks, which I guess when you kind of go from no football for what, 2 years? Is it 2 years?
2 years. Yeah.
To football, it's not great.
It's the kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah. I'm sure Al has a few crutches he can give you a lend of anyway at this stage.
I know, I wasn't that bad.
Great knees, has Al. Great knees.
Yeah.
No, my knees did turn to dust at the end there, but I wasn't that bad for the most part.
Okay, all right, that's grand. Joining us as well this evening, we are delighted to have Ciaran Hall. He's from the Irish Bears Network. You probably would recognise him if you're a long-time listener to the show. He's been on a couple of times talking about the Bears. Ciaran, we're delighted to have you on. How are you, sir?
Good. It's always nice when your team wins 6 games in 7. So it's can't really complain. And the madness of the NFL every single week, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think we're in this sort of strange position now at the moment because I think all of our teams has a plus 500 record. Rain, what are the Panthers 500 now after this? You're exactly 500. You were exactly 500 after the weekend,
which is impressive for the Panthers. But
yeah. I mean, considering the last few years, that's a win.
Thanks for beating Green Bay, by the way.
They deserve to lose that game solely on the jersey selection that day alone.
100%.
Regardless of the opponent. Them and those Steelers throwbacks that just set the league back about 10 years. You know, we were doing well. I think what was it, Al, week 4 when it was the Tampa Bay Creamsicles against the Seahawks throwbacks.
That was and will be the best looking game of the year.
Yeah,
by far.
That worked out well. You know, I am a fan of the Eagles Kelly Green. I do like that. It's a nice shade.
That's
green.
good.
I do like it.
I want to see the other Eagles throwback jersey though. The state flag one that they had in the 90s, I believe it was. It was like blue, light blue with yellow pants. It was horrendous. Absolutely the worst color combo I've ever seen.
The 90s was not great for uniforms. 90s, early 2000s, they went downhill pretty quick.
They thought they were having a great time.
It was
the amount of acid everyone put in the 90s for those jersey designs. They thought they were having a great time. But so listen, we can talk about jersey designs all week. We'll have to get to sort of the news. We're going to talk a little bit of Bears later on, but right now we're going to speak about the latest head coach firing in the league. That's, of course, Brian Daboll and the New York Giants after they decided to fire him following Sunday's defeat against Ciaran, your Chicago Bears by 24 points to 20. He leaves the team with a 2-8 record. Assistant head coach and offensive coordinator Mike Kafka will take control on an interim basis for the rest of the season. The Giants fired Daboll, like I said, with that 2-8 record, following on from his 3-14 record in 2024 and 6-11 record in 2023. Of course, in his first season, he was named head coach of the year after guiding the Giants to the playoffs and winning a playoff game in Minnesota against the Vikings, but he wasn't able to build on that success in the following years, and he is now out following another rough start to the season. Rian, I'll start with you first on this one. I guess we could kind of see the writing on the wall. Maybe not even just this year, from previous years too. Like I mentioned, those records of 6-11 and 3-14. They finally done it. They pulled the trigger. But what sort of what do you think gave them the idea to do it now, and why didn't they do it in the off season when everyone expected it to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's down to the fact that they drafted a quarterback in the first round in Jackson Dart. I'm guessing they were looking to give him an opportunity to see how he was going to do with a quarterback not named Daniel Jones under center. Um, I get people who are kind of sticking up for Daboll a little bit in terms of the timing of this firing. Like, in the past few weeks, he's lost his running back one, wide receiver one, and QB one all to injury, and that's a really tough way to win games. But at the end of the day, 2-8 is not where a team of this caliber should be. So it was going to happen sometime. It might as well be now, and let's see what the next man up has to kind of guide them towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was coming, to be honest. I'm surprised he made it to this year. And then with the debacle with going into the blue tent to drag Dart out after he got a concussion, and he's been concussed 5 times this year, and then they still keep calling QB runs and QB draws, and it's all over the shop. And they're 2-8 again, and it's just do away with it. Everyone's fired at the end of the year anyway. Shane is gone.
Sorry, I have to jump in there really quickly. But technically, he's been evaluated 4 times for a concussion. It's not actually been confirmed that he's had a concussion 4 times.
Fair enough, yeah, but he keeps getting hit in the head.
It is an issue when your quarterback, one of the tests that they do is ask him what day it is, and he doesn't know on a good day. So it's a pretty tough thing to evaluate a guy like him for a concussion.
Yeah, look. I know it's a tough situation that they're in. But how long has he been there now? 4 years, 3 years? They haven't gotten any better. And 4 years. So just do away with it. Fire everyone at the end of the year and see what you can do next year.
Yeah,
but Ciaran, I'll go to you on this one though. We say why wait, but you've just mentioned it there that he finally had the QB that he wanted, and that relationship between GM, head coach, and QB is so important that now it seemed that they were all aligned, that they have who they wanted. Okay, maybe they started him a little sooner than they would have liked. They would have hoped maybe Russ or Jameis Winston could have been enough of a bridge to get them through this year, to give Dart maybe some reps here and there, but obviously they had to bring him in sooner than they wanted. But he had shown some good potential, and look, listen, the loss of Malik Neighbors is tough, but that's his second serious injury since he's entered the league. Scadaboo's injury, no one accounted for that. But does some blame have to be put on GM Joe Schoen in this situation? Because, he didn't exactly build the offense to help any QB coming in there. If you're getting, at tight end, we've got Brian Bellinger and T.O. Johnson, not guys that we're too familiar with. We've got, Darius Slayton, who's had a lot of drop issues in his career, not just in the last few weeks. And, is the team there to help a new QB come in and succeed?
No, it's not. And I think they're in a tough situation, right? Because of where they were drafting. The teams ahead of them were going to... Look, I didn't think that Cam Ward was going to be... I didn't think he was worthy of the number 1 overall pick. I think there was better players there. But the Giants were in a situation to where they had to take the best defensive player on the board just because of how the way it fell. Now, maybe that's a situation that you try and make the move to trade down and accumulate picks and get players around. Like, there was but I will say, and this is where I think it goes against Brian Daboll, there's enough good players on the Giants to be competitive. And like just looking at this year for the Bears, the Giants defensive line is probably the best one they came up against. Now obviously when you lose guys like Malik Neighbors, you lose Cam Scottaboo, you've now lost Jackson Dart. There was multiple players on the defensive side of the football going into that game that were on the injury report all the way up to Friday. So you can understand why there can be mistakes there. But again, you shouldn't be as bad. Like, I look at it from my own team where they've lost pretty much the majority of their starting cornerback room, and they'll have certain weeks where they look awful, and then other weeks where they're able to rebound. And that's typically what a good coach should be able to do. They should be able to try and limit your frailties and try and prop up where you're good. Like, if they knew that especially with Malik Neighbors going down so early, like, you kind of have to look at this at a long view approach. Like, I think if Jackson Dart's not in there and it's Russell Wilson or it's Jameis Winston and they're losing these games, does Daboll get the axe? Maybe not. I think a lot of it is due to the fact that you're putting your potential franchise quarterback in harm's way in his rookie year. And anytime you do that, you're going to be on the chopping block. And it's tough because I always say this, if you're planning on drafting a quarterback, just fire your coach and get the coach in, because even if you believe in him, and look, Shane is going to believe in Daboll because they came together. They both came from Buffalo. So I don't think this is a situation where the GM and the head coach weren't in lockstep. But unfortunately, when you've been a coach there and you've had losing records, if that continues after you draft your rookie quarterback, you are going to be in trouble. So it's the same with what we saw with the Tennessee Titans. They draft Cam Ward. Team doesn't look very good. Head coach gets axed. We saw it last year as well. With pretty much most teams that ended up drafting quarterbacks last year, similar stories happened where head coach gets fired, and it's the same thing that happens every single year. Teams chase, they go after the quarterback. If they want to do the right thing, just fire the coach and bring somebody in and make them be in lockstep with the franchise quarterback that you've selected. If this was Daboll's first year and the same things happen, he's not getting fired. Part of it is there's been the history of the last couple of years, and then all of this extra noise, and New York is a different animal to any other city. It was always going to happen. The unfortunate thing for now in New York is, like, who's going to take over? Because there's no obvious choice right now. There was a couple of obvious choices last year in the coaching search, and it's going to be a tricky one, like whether they go back to the offensive side of the football in terms of that, or will they just look for somebody that can prop up that defense, because that's really where the strength of that team is right now. It's tough. Like, my brother-in-law's a New York Giants fan over in New York, and he has no idea what's going to come. He said to me yesterday that he wouldn't have fired Daboll because there's no obvious answer after him. So it's going to be an interesting couple of months, but them and the Tennessee Titans get a little bit of a jump on everybody else right now.
Yeah, they do. And Rian, I guess question I have next in this, kind of Ciaran alluded to it there in terms of like the next head coach, but how important now, and look, we haven't even finished, we've only just finished really half this season, but how important now is this offseason for the Giants? Because like it's been said, they feel maybe they have their QB of the future in Jackson Dart. Now, if they feel comfortable going forward with Joe Shane, we'll see. Time will only tell with that. But if they don't get this head coach right, that's another 3-4 years of a setback. So, they've already come to the crucial time. And look, maybe it could be a good thing because they're giving themselves as much time as possible to evaluate upcoming coaches in the league, upcoming coordinators, maybe even look in the college side of things if there's anyone that's taken their fancy. Hell, even the interim coach, Mike Kafka there, who had head coach interviews in the last 2 off seasons. It's a chance for him to show maybe if he's worthy of getting the job himself on a full-time basis. So how important is it here now for the Giants to get this next appointment right?
Yeah, I think it's super important. And just alluding back to what you said too about Joe Shane, whether or not he should get the axe, I actually think he's done a pretty all right job in the last few years. Like, if you look from a macro point of view at the state of the roster now versus the state of the roster when they went on that playoff run 4 years ago, I think they're in a better position now. That defense is certainly stronger. Jackson Dart looks like he has a lot of potential. They have Scadaboo there, who seems to be an excellent running back. They have made a lot of good moves in this past 4 years that I believe have been held back by coaching decisions. Now, I 100% agree with you. It is going to be super, super important for them to pick the right head coach in this cycle, because if they are set back another 3 years, running backs don't tend to last very long in the league. So if you take 3-4 years out of a career like Scadaboo's, he's then going to be less effective than he is at the moment. So, look, the one name that jumps out to me personally, looking at the situation that they have in New York, so mobile gunslinger quarterback, heavy run game, I think Joe Brady stands out as the name to me, the offense coordinator for the Bills this year, as the guy who can step in and make that offense work for the Giants.
They made that mistake once with Daboll. Do you expect them to do it again?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Like, just picking it off the Buffalo coaching staff. But for me, look, as a Carolina Panthers fan, I have a little bit of experience with Joe Brady. Didn't cover himself in glory there in his time at Carolina, but he looks to have improved as he's been on that Buffalo coaching staff. So, yeah, it's the name that pops out to me because I don't see anybody else really, particularly on that offensive side of the football, to take that team forward.
One name, 2 words: Bill Belichick.
Offensive guru,
No.
Bill Belichick.
Come on now. Be serious.
I'm calling it now, and you can point back to this show when the off-season occurs. Bill Belichick is getting an NFL job next year.
No, he's not. After making a show of himself in Carolina, he is not.
One team is going to be silly enough to do it. I know they will.
The Browns.
Look, I'll grant you that the NFL is massively stupid, but they're not that stupid. The show he brought, no, I don't think even the Browns are that dumb. They don't want that. They'll make a lot of mistakes. They don't want that mess. They've already got enough with
girlfriend, that head coach, because she seemed to be the head coach of UNC.
He would.
Do you have a name?
The Colts owner. She has a headset and she writes down the plays in every game. That's what Belichick's
they're winning.
They are winning.
Yeah. I can't, for some reason, I can't remember his name. Defensive coordinator of the Patriots. What's his name? Why can't I think of his name? Because I was just thinking what a good job they were doing earlier. Not perfect.
Mike Rabel, I think, is looking more after the defense. He'd be more the kind of the coordinator, isn't he?
Yeah, but he's not going anywhere.
Is it Terrell Williams?
Well,
Terrell Williams.
Terrell Williams.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly, I think a defensive coordinator would be good to look at, because they in the last couple of years have done better than all, like, the big names. In the NFL, everyone was looking at the offensive coaches and seeing how good they were going to do. But then you have, obviously guys like Mike McDonald coming in, and the Seahawks are just a whole new team within 2 years. Completely unrecognizable on both sides of the ball. That the offense hasn't looked like this in years, since Prime Russ, with a defensive coach. And I think, a lot of that is the physicality they bring. So I don't have a specific name. like I said, I think that they're doing a great job over there with the Patriots, but it's so hard to say because I don't know what to make of the Giants. To be honest with you, they're a really hard team to evaluate. It depends on if they're going to keep Dar as well. Like if you're absolutely sure this is a guy you can go ahead with, then great, pick whatever coach you're liking there to kind of go ahead with him. But if you're not sure, then now is the time to just move on. Don't trick yourself into thinking you can change him. And if you're not convinced, move on.
I have 3 names.
I was going to say, do you want me to give you an idea of how to evaluate the Giants? In the span that Daboll has been head coach, the New York Jets have a better overall record than the Giants do. And the Jets have rotated head coaches and QBs.
And that includes a playoff appearance for the Giants? Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Oh my.
Yep.
Oh.
There you go. Anyway, rough. Ciaran, give us those 3 names.
So, number 1, if we go to the NFL side of things, I think the Browns are going to fire Kevin Stefanski. And I think he's going to be one of the key names. If they want to go to college football, some of the names that were floating around in the last cycle, so one that could potentially link back up with Jackson Dart is Lane Kiffin. The other one, which I don't think is likely, but I think teams will try and get him to interview, is Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame. And then if you want to go the OC route, that might work because everybody goes to the same team all the time in terms of Sean McVay. You look at Mike LaFleur. So I think there'll be names that you hear about. Obviously last year it was like Mike McCarthy he'll be floating around again. Will there be rumors about Mike Tomlin again with Pittsburgh, and there was potential that he could have gone? I think you're going to hear a lot of the same names. Yeah. You'll hear if the Chiefs end up winning Super Bowl again, you're probably going to hear like Matt Nagy again, considering he was a head coach before. But I think it'll be interesting to see what route they go. Do they go former head coach? Do they go new DC or OC that hasn't been head coach before, or do they go the college route? Because the one thing that you can say is that the Giants, unlike some of the other teams, like even when you look at Tennessee, they're going to get the checkbooks out and they're going to pay for the big fish, because look, Daboll was the number 1 guy the year that he came out. So they will go after the guy that they want. It just depends on the situation if they'll be able to get them. But I think those are some of the key names. And look, there might be a surprise here or there that gets fired that teams will go straight away trying to get. You may even see Brian Flores be another option because he got a bunch of interviews last year. So, but I think Kevin Stefanski, for me, I'd say is probably most probable, because I think he's going to get fired from Cleveland and he has been a coach of the year. So I think he will get a job again.
Yeah.
I want to put in another name outside shot. Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes, defensive coordinator for the Jets. Did a really good job as interim head coach for the Panthers. So I think he's in with an outside shot there.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to DC routes, then I would look at the Texans DC, Matt Burke. Yeah, he'd be someone that I think will get interviews this year. I know it's DeMeco Ryans' team, but it is still his defensive coordinator, so we'll see what happens there. But look, we could spell names all evening and think how they would work in a Giants team, and hell, maybe even a Titans team. Well, they are still on the lookout for their next head coach after firing Brian Callahan too. But let's move on and talk about a little bit about the Bears then, Ciaran. They are I know it's probably tough because you're probably more, obviously it means more to you, so it's probably going to be tougher, but, great, over 500 with Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams is looking more and more assured as the weeks go on. He's actually able to take on games more and more, obviously helping the Bears beat the Giants with those 2 fourth quarter touchdowns, especially the second one where he ran it himself. You know, I guess before we get more in depth into the team and the division, sort of your broad view of how the season has gone so far.
It's been chaotic. It's been such a weird season because after the first 2 weeks of the year, people were thinking, is this just the same old story where there was a bit of, not hype, but there was a bit of positivity going into the season. You start 0-2. The first game against Minnesota, you probably should have won. And then you find your way back to 2-2. And there was a game against the Raiders where you probably should have lost. And I think most Bears fans had them at 2-2 heading into the bye week. And then I said, coming out of that bye against the Commanders, my point was if they win that game, I think they'll go on a little bit of a run because you're coming into a part of the schedule where you don't have to be perfect and you can still win those games. And that's exactly what happened. They were the one thing that you'll say is when the Bears have the chance to win at the very end and it's in Caleb's hands, more often than not, the Bears have ended up winning those games. So since the Bears' final game of last season, Caleb has had 5 come from behind wins in the fourth quarter. I can't remember the last time a Bears quarterback has been able to do that so early in their career. It's been crazy because there's games that like the Bears should have been able to put away. That Bengals game, there was no reason why they shouldn't have won that game by 14, 17 points. And little things that happen, like they get an interception and like a mild touch before Tremaine Edmonds picks the ball off, gets counted as a tackle and doesn't count as a pick six. That counts as a pick six and the game's over. But it's little things like that that have really impacted kind of what the viewpoint on this team was, because that game I think is kind of a microcosm of the Bears season, where there's games where you should have won until you shouldn't have won and then you end up winning it. And yeah, it's been crazy, but again, the only thing really at this point that matters is winning these games. And when Caleb has the ball and you have a chance to win at the end of the game, and most Bears fans will say the same, there's not that kind of worry of like, how are they going to do this? You just expect that they're going to either get into field goal range or be able to score. And more often than not this season, that's exactly what's happened. Even when the Bengals scored that last touchdown and there was still, I think it was like 50 seconds left, I'm like, it's enough time to at least get into field goal range. And then they just kind of, it's like everything just calms down when it's the most important part of the game. Caleb could not be playing well in a particular game, but when it comes towards the end and he has the ball in his hands, he more often than not makes the right play and ends up winning the game for them. And that's what he's been able to do the last few weeks. And it's been tough because you have a defense that has lost a lot of their key playmakers. Like, you've lost Jalen Johnson pretty much since the beginning of the year. Kyler Gordon, you missed him. Their premier backup cornerback Terrell Smith at the beginning in training camp went down. So they're really starting with I think it's their second overall corner, their third overall corner because Kyler Gordon's out. And then like guys that would have been 5th or 6th in the depth chart at the cornerback position. But they're finding ways to win. And it's good because they're implementing 2 very complex systems on offense and defense. And they're getting more comfortable. And this team, I would say, will probably play more complete football by the end of the season rather than now. So the fact that they're winning games is helpful because it gives you an opportunity. When you go 6-3, you can be average in these last 8 games. You can win 4 of 8 and you can make the playoffs. And it's a good position to be in. It probably helps that you get to play your division coming up here. You get to play Green Bay twice. You get to play against Minnesota this week. So your fate is in your hands. You don't have to hope and pray that other teams lose because you're in control here. You're a game ahead of Green Bay. You're 2 games ahead of Minnesota. You're half a game ahead of the 49ers if you end up going for the wild card. And I think if anybody asked a Bears fan prior to the season that if at this point you'd be 6-3, how you'd be feeling. I think everybody would be extremely positive, and it's good to see. There's things that need to be fixed on offense as well. I think they need to see more Kyle Monongai rather than DeAndre Swift, because he's a better fit for what Ben Johnson wants to do, and the basis of the offense isn't really the passing game with Ben Johnson, even though a lot of people think it is because of what we saw in Detroit. In Detroit, it's always been run first, run sets up the pass, and when that happens, good things happen. And they've been very up and down in the running game, and I think that just comes to the style of some of the running backs that they have. DeAndre Swift, great in space, but he doesn't really fit what Ben wants to do in terms of between the tackles, and ultimately makes a lot of mistakes in terms of his reads that could go for better yardage. And that's why when something doesn't work on offense, you'll always hear Ben Johnson first of all talk about the running game and how that sets everything up. And if they get that going, and if they can be consistent with that, I think you're going to see the offense kind of propel further forward. And look, they have the weapons. The offensive line's played well. Caleb's ascending. Now, all they really need to do is kind of put it all together. If they can have a complete game where the defense plays well and the offense plays well in one game, that's where you'll see one of those games where they'll win by 20 points. But it's been one game the defense wins it for you, one game the offense wins it for you. They haven't really put together a full game, but watching this team, you can tell it's coming. It's just, what week are we going to see it?
Mm-hmm. And I guess a huge thing, and I guess, Brian, I'll kind of open this up to yourself on this one. The fact that, this season especially, the limelight has not really been on the Bears. Ben Johnson has been allowed to just get on with his work. Caleb Williams has not had the scrutiny of the media, although probably local media and stuff like that. And Ciaran, you probably know better than we do. But in terms of national media attention, he's not getting as much either. And that comes with winning games. That comes with not having 3 interception games. That comes with, the team, being able to put up points and to beat teams that they should be beating, like the Bengals. Although it was in the manner that they did, they still won the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, look, that's a perfect way to phrase it, to be honest, Dara, because I was worried you were going to come to me with something important about the Bears season. Because, to be honest, I haven't heard or seen very much of them at all. And that's usually a positive sign for the NFC North. It's not the biggest market in the world. So if you're not hearing about a team in the NFC North, they're probably doing all right. And the Bears seem to be, I haven't seen a huge amount of scrutiny, like you said, of Caleb Williams, where we did last season. Like pretty much every week, there was somebody calling for his head on a national level. In the media in the States. So, yeah, look, it seems to be going well. And what I always say about this game is it's important to win games, regardless of how you do it. Winning games is the most important thing you can do. And I know, that sounds pretty fundamental and obvious, but it really helps from a confidence point of view going into the kind of postseason. To have multiple wins under your belt instead of, squeaking in as a wild card team and not looking good doing it. If you have the wins under your belt, regardless of what the football that you played during the season, you're going to have a bit of confidence that you can do it again in the off season or in the postseason even.
Mm-hmm. I guess, if you look at the division as a whole, heading into this season, we looked at Green Bay. We looked at Detroit, especially as 2 teams. And I guess, look, there were still question marks with the Vikings and how J.J. McCarthy was going to settle in. But if we focus just on the Lions and the Packers, we expected those 2 teams maybe to be fighting each other for the division this year. Probably fighting for the first seed, maybe in the NFC with possibly the Eagles. But it hasn't come to that. Although the Lions now have played very well. They haven't been blowing teams away like they had last year. That could be down to the fact that the coordinators have moved on and the issues with the new offensive coordinator and the team. I can't remember who the new one is at the Lions, but he's play calling duties has been taken off him and Dan Campbell has taken over again. Green Bay, especially after the Micah Parsons trade, we thought that's it. They're going to stroll through. They have shown fragility even on offense, that they haven't been able to put up points maybe that we expected them to. Losing 10-7 on Monday night against the Eagles. It's the first occasion. I think it's I have the stats here. Yeah, so it's that's 2 games in a row. Sorry, I should say for the Packers where they failed to score over 14 points in a game, and the third occasion this season if you count the Browns loss in week 3 as well. So, there's a real opportunity here for the Bears, especially if, like Ciaran is saying, that if they can get things right for the second half of the season where they can actually start playing not better, but probably more to the level that Ben Johnson expects, that there is a division here for them.
Yeah, I mean that number 2 spot at least is wide open for them to take it, and especially now with the Packers, the way they're playing. Like the defense is pretty good, and they can stop teams, but that offense is going nowhere with the state of that offensive line. In Green Bay, it's so depleted, and you could see it. Yesterday night, they couldn't move the ball at all, and it's a great opportunity for the Bears, and they can absolutely capitalize on that because they have been good despite some injuries on defense. Like you said, Ciaran, the secondary is pretty well depleted at this point, but they're playing well despite that. And Caleb Williams has come a long way this year. I think he's playing a lot better. He's making much better decisions. His throws are accurate. He's just overall a much improved player this year. And it's just come together a lot better. They seem like a much more cohesive unit on both sides of the ball this year. So that number 2 spot at least is wide open for them to take it now. And the Vikings are, they might win a couple more games, but I don't think they're going anywhere. They'll stay in 4. The Lions, I don't know if they can challenge them outright for that first spot, but I think they can give them a run, to be honest. The Lions are not infallible, and they're only a game ahead. They've shown that they have their weaknesses. And if they make changes like you suggested, Ciaran putting Munungai ahead of Swift, I agree with that. I think had that one game against the Bengals, he looked incredible, and in the limited time he's seen, he's looked great. Outside of that, so I think they can definitely take 2 overall this year, but I think they could even give the Lions a run for their money if they keep improving as they have done.
I think the one thing that should worry the Bears, though, is the amount of talent that's in that division at the moment. Like, yes, the Green Bay Packers are faltering, but they do have an exceptional roster there, outside of course, the O-line that Al mentioned. But I think you really need to look at the play calling with Green Bay. They've been just very, very conservative. I think in that game on Monday night, last night, they had 20 completions. I think 18 of them went for less than 9 yards. And if you're paying your quarterback $240 million, you should be seeing a bigger output than that. And that's mostly down to the scheme, right? Those were the guys who were open at the time. So my worry is if they get their play calling sorted out, they are going to be at or above the level of the Bears. I think even Ciaran would agree that the talent in the roster in Green Bay is probably superior to the talent in the roster that's there in Chicago. So yeah, that's my only worry for the Bears. But at the moment, they're looking like the certainly the number 2, if not the number 1, just based on their play.
I'll say this about Green Bay. They, like you said, they're paying Jordan Love $255 million for him to play like a mid quarterback. And therein lies the issue. Because if he was playing at a superior level, like no one's talking about play calling. Like LaFleur knows how to call plays. Like he's schemed guys open for years. The issue is obviously the offensive line hasn't performed, but that comes down to the GM. They paid a lot of money for guys that have either been injured in Aaron Banks or guys that have not performed very well. But also, you draft a receiver, number 1, or as your first round pick, and Caleb Williams has more receiving touchdowns than said wide receiver. So you have those. Look, Green Bay's defensive line is probably the best in the NFC North. I know like the Lions are good with Aiden Hutchinson and stuff, but Green Bay's defensive line is great. The problem is their secondary is putrid. Their offensive line is putrid. Their receivers are not putting up the numbers that you would expect, and their quarterback is not playing well enough. And when you put all those things together, that tells me that you're probably winning like 8 games. And that's probably where the Green Bay Packers are going to be. I think the Bears are probably somewhere between 9 to 10, and I think the Lions. I wish I had the same optimism as you, Al, because I don't. I do think that the Lions are going to run away with the division in the end. I think they'll probably win 12 or 13 games here, and I think the Bears are probably looking at the 9 or 10 mark. But the Green Bay Packers, they are getting more injured as the season goes on. They're playing worse as the season goes on, and look, people will talk about the Bears on the teams that they've beaten, but Green Bay, I know they've just played the Eagles, but they played the Carolina Panthers again, who have been roughly they're at 500 now, but they wouldn't be this like potent offense. But Green Bay weren't able to do anything against Carolina, and those should be, and even the weeks before that where they've just squeaked by, or even the tie against the Dallas Cowboys a week after the Bears put like 40 something points up on them and won that game fairly easily. Green Bay have struggled here over the last month, and they've been able to hide part of it where they've gotten the wins against like the Arizona Cardinals, but they were close to screwing that game up as well. So they're a team that look, maybe they'll turn it around. I don't particularly think that they're going to make the playoffs. Like, I think the Bears have a better chance. Both teams have a very similar schedule at the end. It's a weird one this year. The Bears play Green Bay at Lambeau on December 7th and then play at Soldier Field on December 20th. So it's literally, there's only one game in between. I think that game at Soldier Field is one where I think the Bears will win it, because Green Bay has to travel in between those 2 games to Denver, while the Bears get the Browns at home. So that's a period of time where it could swing one way or the other, because when you play a team twice in 3 weeks, I think that's going to be like it's like a mini group there to try and make the playoffs. And look, Minnesota are a weird team. One week they look really good, and the next week they look like they could be a bottom 5 team in the league. So you don't know what you're getting with them. It's the same with JJ McCarthy and his weird alter ego that he likes to call himself. I don't think that helps him at all. But they're a weird team. Like, they could come out this week and beat the Bears, and then next week lose by 30, and that's just the way they are. And again, I think they're probably a team that ends up winning like 7 or 8 games as well. So I think you're going to see the Bears, the Vikings, and the Packers be grouped quite similarly, where there might be like 1 or 2 games between them. And I think ultimately the Lions are such a high-powered offense that they should be able to win a lot of these games. Their defense is depleted in the secondary, where I think it's going to be a similar story for them. I think they'll make the playoffs. They'll probably be a 1, 2, or 3 seed, and ultimately it won't be enough, because when those injuries rack up, we saw last year, it's just very difficult to get by when you get to playoff time, because things get that much more difficult. But I think towards the end, the Lions will probably slightly run away with the division, but I don't think they're going to be the team that comes out of the NFC this year, even though their fans seem to think so.
All right. We'll talk about Joe Burrow before we wrap up the show, but a bit of breaking news here in the last few minutes that the Jaguars have announced that their rookie wide receiver cornerback Travis Hunter has had season-ending knee surgery. It is an LCL repair that he needed. Initially, he was put on IR only for 4 weeks to try and figure this knee injury out, but it seems as though it's going to be a full season ender. It's looking within 6 months he can return to full football activity. So, Rian, I'll go to you on this one. A season-ending knee injury, a tough one for him in his first season, and just when he was starting to get used to the league. And we spoke about it last week at the trade deadline when they went for Jacoby Myers, that maybe this was a potential reason why. And it seems though it is coming true that in fact the knee injury to Travis Hunter was actually a lot worse than they first anticipated.
Yeah, it is tough to see a guy of his talent go down. Obviously, we talked a few weeks ago about at what point do you label him a bust, but from that point onwards, he has actually been continuing to improve, particularly on the offensive side of the football. So yeah, it's tough to see that happen, but that Jaguars team need all the help that they can get on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they let that lead slip at the weekend, and that was just atrocious. They couldn't move the ball at all in the second half. So, hopefully Jacoby Myers can fill that gap. Obviously, difficult to make any real changes in your first game there, but we'll have to see what the Jaguars offense holds for the rest of the season.
Yeah, actually, that you mentioned that about the game last weekend. What is with this season and teams shitting the bed in the fourth quarter when they're up by so many?
I don't know.
What is going on?
It's mental.
Teams just falling asleep at the wheel. Jaguars last week, obviously the Giants against the Broncos. The Giants again in the fourth quarter this week as well. Some other games there that I probably haven't forgotten about too. But, you never normally see it like this. And I don't know if it's concentration or not, but we'll see. But one player I want to speak about before we wrap up this edition of the show, and that is Joe Burrow, because the Bengals have officially opened his 21-day practice window for returning to the team. Of course, he went out with a severe case of turf toe earlier on the season. Initial projections were suggesting that Burrow might not play again until mid-December, if at all, considering the team standing outside of the playoff race. However, Adam Schefter spoke about it on his podcast, actually just today on the Adam Schefter podcast, talking about when we could possibly see him starting again. I quote, he says, I'd like to think he'd target that Thanksgiving game, which is at Baltimore, to come back. Schefter said, I personally think the more realistic target is the next week at Buffalo. I think the game at Buffalo is the game we should circle for Burrow's return. That is week 14. So that is in 4 weeks' time. So from now until then, they have 3 games. They're at the Steelers this weekend, at home to the Patriots, and then at the Ravens on Thanksgiving. I'll go to you first on this one. If they lose all 3 of those games, would you personally just wrap up Joe Burrow for the season and say, we're not risking you aggravating that turf toe anymore? We're out of playoff contention. Just look after your body for the rest of this year.
I'd say that now. If he's not 100%, like if they're not confident he's 100% and he's not going to re-aggravate that injury behind what has been a terrible offensive line, I wouldn't play him at all. He doesn't move the needle enough. The Bengals are a better team when Joe Burrow is playing, but that defense has given up 30 points plus more often than not, or close to it, and they're just going to keep losing games. It's not like Flacco has been awful Like, he's been good, and he threw, 400 yards and 4 touchdowns there a couple of weeks ago. Like, he's a good quarterback, and Joe Burrow doesn't move the needle enough to risk re-injuring him even worse, potentially, with a team that's just not going to go anywhere. There's a good chance they lose these 3 games anyway, and I just don't see the benefit in it. That defense has been terrible, and now they're down one of their only good players in Logan Wilson, who went for a 7th. I can't remember who got him, but Cowboys. Look, if you're not 100%, or if he's not 100%, don't play him. It's not worth the risk at this point. Your season isn't getting any better.
Mm-hmm. Ciaran, how much would you put into the moral moving of the needle rather than the actual maybe on the field what you see in terms of the lift that it would give the players to see that their QB1 is coming back on the field? And also, if you look at, we've talked about divisions and all to play for, there is still a lot to play for in this AFC North. The Steelers are leading it at the moment. They are not a team that you feel comfortable running the table or, putting a bunch of wins together at the moment with how they're playing. You have the Ravens, who, yes, have won the last 3 with Lamar Jackson back in the team, but it's still a defense that has shown serious cracks this year too. So, if they can just have enough just to get them through those games with Joe Burrow, it's still a chance for them. What do you think?
Potentially. I would tend to agree with Al. I don't know if it's worth it, but maybe Joe Burrow and Trey Hendrickson come back fully healthy and they're good to go, and you can make a little bit of a run because, like you said, the division's open. I don't think the Steelers are going to win that division in the end. I think it will be the Baltimore Ravens. I think Lamar Jackson is a multiplier, and I think he's going to be a reason why they do it. If Burrow does come back and they're within a game or 2, I could see them competing for it, because what I agree on, I wouldn't bring him back. I do disagree in terms of he doesn't move the needle, because Joe Burrow, when Joe Burrow is 100% healthy, is one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the National Football League. But the question is just, what type of impact will he be able to make if that defense can't stop anybody? Because they can't. Right now, they can't stop anybody. You can score at will on the Bengals defense. You can run on them, you can pass on them, and until they're able to limit the damage there, Joe Burrow can put up 40 points, but if your defense is giving up 45, it doesn't matter. And that's where they're going to have to look at this. You mentioned it in your question. If they lose the next 3 by the time he's supposed to come back, there's very little reason for Joe Burrow to play. Now, you'll have to protect him from himself, because you've opened the window. He's going to want to come back. He's going to want to play because he's lost this entire season. None of these athletes want to not play football. So you've done it. He's probably going to come back. But you probably won't see the same type of game plan that you normally see with Joe Burrow, because there probably will be a bit of a hesitation there. But again, it's if they're in with a puncher's chance when he's planning on coming back, he's good enough to be able to push them over the edge. The problem that they have is Lamar Jackson came back a couple of weeks earlier, and the Ravens are now 3 games in a row. I could see them continuing to win. They still have some very winnable games on that schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time Joe Burrow's coming back that the Ravens have taken over from the Pittsburgh Steelers at the start, and you still look at them and being like, they're still going to win that division. I think if you had to put money on it, I think the Ravens are probably the team to beat in that division. And if they're a couple of games ahead of the Bengals by the time Burrow is planning on coming back, it'll be a difficult conversation, but it probably ends up being where he doesn't play, or maybe he just plays a little bit later, and it's more of a game or 2 just to get him more comfortable and have some game time, because the last thing they're going to want is him be gone for an entire year and not play any football until next September. Because if you want to plan on competing, which you should, with a guy like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you need to make sure that he's ready. And if you've basically not played football in almost 2 years, that's an issue. So it's going to be a really interesting one. The NFL is better when players like Joe Burrow are suiting up on Sundays, but again, kind of like what Al said, I don't know how much it's going to be worth it for the Bengals if their defense plays as bad as they have the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Rain, I'm just looking at the Bengals schedule, and the timing is interesting when you say the Bills game. So Steelers, Patriots, at Ravens, at the Bills if that's his comeback game. Okay, maybe they might lose that game. There's a chance that they could win that game. They play the Ravens at home after that. And then the last 3 games is against teams all sub 500, and that's at the Dolphins, and then 2 home games against the Cardinals and the Browns. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that they could win those last 3 games. It all depends on where they are at the moment, but it's like, do you give them a fighter's chance? Or are you just...
It's difficult to say. That AFC North has always kind of confused me a little bit in terms of the just overall quality of playing there. Usually it's a whole different ball game when you get to in-division games. So I wouldn't rule the Bengals out against the Steelers or the Ravens in the next couple of weeks, simply because they're AFC North divisional games. That game against the Steelers, that's always a huge, heavy-hitting, hard game. It's the type of game where you don't need a star-studded defense for them to show up and be physical and kind of just be good enough to get them over the line. And that's going to happen in a few games this season, where they are going to be good enough to get that, what is a star-studded offense across the line. And when you have Joe Burrow within that offense, it's an even more star-studded team. I think Al maybe used a poor turn of phrase when he said he doesn't move the needle. I think he means that it hasn't been the QB play, basically.
I meant enough to make up for the defense.
Yeah. Well, for me, he is the biggest needle turner in the NFL. We saw him when he came back last season. That run of 5 or 6 games at the end of the season, he played better than any quarterback I've ever seen playing the game of football. So, look, there's always a chance. And until they're mathematically ruled out of a playoff spot, I think the plan should be within the Bengals to get Joe Burrow back as quickly as possible.
Okay. I think that's where we're going to wrap up this edition of the show. Hit the hour perfectly. Guys, as always, I really appreciate you coming on, Al and Rain. Al, first of all, welcome back after a long hiatus. Longish.
Yeah, sorry.
Not as long as usual, Dara. Usually it's like 7 or 8 months before we hear from you.
That's true. That's true. And Rain, I haven't said it because I was afraid I didn't want to jinx it, so I said I'd leave it for the end of the show. I've been really impressed that you're no longer using a piece of a cornflake as your modem anymore for your internet. It's smooth. I see your lovely face.
I've switched my PC, not the modem. It's I don't know what was going on with that at all.
And Ciaran, thank you so much for coming on this evening. Really hope that you enjoyed getting to talk not just Bears, but maybe a little more wider NFL stuff, to expand some conversations about what's happening around the league.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. Before we wrap up this edition show, if you are watching this on YouTube and you haven't already, please like the show and subscribe to the channel. It will really help us out, get us up there in the algorithm, which everybody of course is fighting to and nail for. If you are listening to us on Spotify or anything like that, make sure you're subscribed to the show as well. Under Center Podcast, that's where you're going to find us there. Socials at Under Center Pod, Twitter and Instagram, TikTok as well. Actually, we post a few clips on that too. So that is where we're going to, like I said, wrap up this edition of the show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe and we'll see you soon.